And as we await the announcement of John Kerry's nomination by the president at the White House, a nomination resulting in part from Susan Rice's withdrawal from contention after that uproar over her comments on Benghazi. Joining us now, one of the leading critics of the administration's response to Benghazi, Republican Congressman Jason Chaffetz. Congressman, John Kerry, I know the Senate is the confirming body, not
right.
you, but does this end the controversy over Benghazi, or does that continue and need to be investigated? That the panel having spoken and Hillary Clinton having promised to follow up.
Oh, no, there's still a long ways to go to get to the bottom of Benghazi and making sure that it never, ever happens again. I'm sure that Senator Kerry will be easily confirmed from the Senate. I think he's a good and decent person. I probably disagree with him on most every issue, but in terms of being a person, I'm sure he'll be confirmed. But we got a long ways to go on Benghazi.
And your committees have said you want to hear from Hillary Clinton.
Oh, absolutely. She was the person in charge. We have 4 dead Americans. We have, think about it, in a 60-day period, a group came in and said there are more than 24 systemic failures. After 60 recommendations, what in the world has been going on over there to have so many problems?
Now let's talk about gun control, because the National Rifle Association has responded and basically said, let's stop the bad guys with guns with good guys with guns, or good teachers with guns and more guns. How do you respond to those who say that more guns are not the answer?
Well, you know, guns aren't necessarily for everyone. I happen to be a concealed carry permit holder. I have a Glock. I have a shotgun. And there are some schools that will find a solution best by having an armed person there who's passed the appropriate background checks, and I would support that. But I wouldn't necessarily say that every school has to do this. It has to be a local decision. I don't want the federal government to make all these decisions. I want communities and parents and schools to make these types of decisions.
Don't they need to be made on the federal level? Because, as Mike Bloomberg and others would tell you from urban areas, Philadelphia, Mayor Nutter, the guns are illegal. These semi-automatics are purchased elsewhere and flood into our cities and help create the crime in the street and the children elsewhere who are being killed.
Well, look, in Utah, we think we do it a lot better than the way they do it in Chicago, and the way they do it better than they do in New York City. So we happen to be much more conducive to allowing people to get concealed carry permits. We happen to think that if you go through the appropriate process to get a concealed carry permit, that's a good thing. But again, guns aren't for everybody, but as a constitutional right, you should be able to access those weapons.
What about background checks? 40% of the guns sold in this country are sold without background checks. Are there some steps that the NRA should be accepting so that we can begin to get a handle on the proliferation of weapons in the hands of people who should not be having them?
I do have worries, and I've expressed since the moment this tragedy happened and before, this intersection between the use of lethal weapons and the access to lethal weapons and the mental health side. I think that's common ground. We got to go back and reevaluate what's worked and what hasn't worked in the past. But what you first and foremost don't want is somebody who doesn't have the mental capacity to make these types of rational decisions be able to obtain a gun. And that is a difficult equation. When you're going to take somebody's constitutional rights away, that's a difficult intersection. So, but something, I want to have an open mind. I'm as pro-gun as they get, but
you're open to some controls on the semi-automatics, the machines, the weapons of war.
I will have an open mind on anything, but I tell you, I'm as rock solid Second Amendment as there is. We had an assault weapons ban. It didn't really do anything. The crime rate was coming down beforehand. After the 10-year ban, it continued to go down. Less than 2% of the problem here happens with these so-called assault weapons. And so if you really want to try to get to the bigger, broader root of the problem, I think you have to tackle first and foremost the mental health side of it. We need to talk about gangs. We need to talk about border violence. I mean, this is where these things happen by the tens of thousands.
Jason Chaffetz, thank you very much, Congressman.
Thank you.
We'll see you on Meet the Press on Sunday with David Gregory. And President Obama expecting to make his announcement nominating John Kerry for Secretary of State at any moment in the Roosevelt Room at the White House, and we'll bring it to you live. We'll be right back.